Today's topic is choosing. We're really excited about this one because I think this is something that I don't know. I don't know if it's not talked about a lot, but I don't think it's stressed a lot. Because usually when people are talking about, in the space, people who are experts and successful at whatever they're doing are talking about their enterprises, their operations, like what's working for them, and it's helping out people to varying degrees all over the country. And that's like, Greg and his counterparts and stuff like that. I think it helps a lot of people out, but I think that something that's not necessarily talked about a ton is like how the heck you even choose like what enterprise you want to be using on your farm. And specifically, like we'll start with like we'll call it like your mothership for this
your primary
discussion.
Or
the mothership.
The mothership.
Yeah, where like that enterprise is going to be the absolute core of your operation. That's what's going to be the focus, and then everything outside of that mothership is just going to be like little side enterprises. They can be decently large, but like really we're focusing this first part of the discussion on figuring out how to decide on that core enterprise.
So let's give some examples. For example, Greg's enterprise, his core is the cattle. That's like what we spend the most time on. That's what we're the most focused on. Some complementary enterprises would be like the sheep. The sheep they're higher up there on the
complementary scale
on the list, but they're more of a the cattle takes priority, and the sheep get done when we have time to get done, and we try to manage correctly, but it's not as much a focus as like it is on the cattle.
Yep.
And so that's like for Greg's situation. I know for like most of like Joel Salatin, his main like what he built his farm around was the chickens, the pastured broilers, and he fit everything else around to complement them. Or that's like what he started with. That's what his business was founded off of. And maybe that might not be to say that they are the most profitable in the long run, but it's like how he got it going, and it's what his main focus is.
It's the core enterprise, and then there's always some evolving and tweaking as you learn and grow. But so how do you even begin to start thinking about like what I'm going to choose to be an enterprise in my farm? And so I think the first most important piece is you got to tie it back to the land. And for people who watched last week's live stream and have looked at some of the clips on YouTube from last week's live stream, it was all about land and the importance of land to your business and in the agriculture industry, like how important being focused on land in the specific ecosystem that you're a part of. And so tying back to the land is the first big key with deciding what your core enterprise is going to be. And by that, you need to first understand whatever animal or breed of animal or thing, like if you're doing mushrooms or something like that, like what the environmental aspects and requirements are of that breed, of that specific animal, of that thing that you're trying to become a core focus. So, for example, with South Poles, right? Like what would the South Pole cattle breed do you need as far as like ideal conditions? What are their like ideal temperature ranges? Do they like really dry, really dry environments or really humid environments?
Really warm environments, really
cold environments.
Fescue belt.
Yeah.
Not the fescue belt.
What kind of forage do they excel on? Is it more like a Corriente where they can eat like wood chips and be totally okay, or are they like a high performance sports car where you can only put like perfectly pristine ideal forage in them for them to operate correctly? So those are like the things you need to understand about everything, like what sheep breeds are you using if you're doing sheep, like that kind of thing. Under really drilling down and understanding the land requirements, the environmental requirements of that specific enterprise would be a good first step. And then the flip side of that is you need to understand like we talked about last week. You need to understand the natural history and the actual like land use history of the piece of property that you're on, because you're not going to be able to make that connection between the land and the enterprise if you don't know anything about the land and if you don't know anything about the enterprise. So education on both of those pieces is paramount in the beginning.
For example, you probably shouldn't be running elephants and giraffes in Oklahoma.
Yeah, probably not a good idea.
Sorry.
Or yaks or anything like that.
Things like that. Like that's a perfect example. You don't like say you live like somewhere like in the southern states or where it gets really hot and you have this vision in your head. Oh, I'm gonna run yaks
or Highland cattle.
Yeah, because it's more it's more like primitive and fitting into nature better.
And they're hardy.
Yeah, and they're super hardy. And you get down there in the Oklahoma or the Texas summers or whatever, and the yaks have this huge hair coat on them, and they just they're way too hot. They're not going to perform well. They're meant for a colder climate. Then like you trying to force this enterprise into it's like a square peg into a round hole. So it doesn't work. You need to understand that going into it. And make sure that the enterprise you're looking at getting into does fit your environment and your market. But that's a whole
other thing. But no, it's also an important piece when you're choosing an enterprise is to understand, is there a demand for it, and is the market like saturated with it? You know what I mean? Are there a million people raising pasture broilers around my area, and so me getting into it, there's not going to be a huge demand for it because the supply is really big? Or is it the fact that like nobody understands what a pasture broiler even is, and so nobody's going to want to spend $6 per pound on a chicken or whatever, because they can just go to the grocery store and buy one really cheap. It's like those kinds of things you got to be thinking about. Think about how you're going to be marketing that thing in your specific circles, in your business. And so all those things, understanding the land, understanding your markets, understanding the enterprise itself, like whatever that is, cattle, sheep, mushrooms, whatever,
market
gardens, chickens, pigs,
yaks,
goats, sheep's milk cheese, whatever it is, right?
Bison.
So that's, I would say, part A of choosing a mothership is understanding all that education and like background work on whatever you're thinking about. The other piece, which I think is equally, if not more important to this whole thing, is like, what are you specifically into? Like, what do you enjoy doing? What gets you up in the morning? Because regardless of what you choose, it's going to be work. It's going to be a lot of hard work. But if you enjoy whatever it is, if you really love cattle, if you really love sheep, if you really love chickens, whatever it is, it's not going to feel like an arduous task. It's going to feel like, this is cool. Like, I get to put some like effort into this, and it's super rewarding because I really get to do what I love. And that'll definitely keep you going. So that's something you really got to like do some soul searching with and think about long and hard. Is this something that I'm truly passionate about? Because that's...
Or is it something I'm doing because I feel like I have to?
Or is it something I'm doing because somebody else in the space is doing it and it says that it's really successful?
Right.
I think people get caught up in that hype a lot where, we can pick on ourselves. Like, we talk about South Pole cattle and sheep. And so people get, all revved up about that. But are you getting revved up about that because it's from inside you, or is it because we get revved up about it? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, it's a really important distinction to make.
Yeah, and it's like, and the same thing like for us, like maybe someday if we're working up in Saskatchewan, we're not going to be running South Pole cattle, even though we see the benefits and the advantages of South Pole in their environment. They're not going to perform well in Saskatchewan. And so something like maybe a Highlander or a Galloway or a yak. Yeah. Don't do belted Galloways. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah.
And so like being able to just get like we both love cattle.
Yeah.
We both really enjoy working with the cattle, and being like understanding your environment and being able to plug in cattle into your environment, whether it's like whatever breed you can be.
Yep.
Like that's an important part of it too.
Yep. But if you don't like them, if it doesn't get you up in the morning, your stuff's gonna go wrong, and you're gonna get into some serious binds and be putting out some serious fires, so to speak, over the course of your time in this industry. And so it just makes it a lot easier to deal with the headaches. What is someone says something funny?
I get revved up about whatever Greg says.
Yeah. but it's true though, because
Yeah.
like it's not only Greg, but there's a lot of passionate people in this
Yeah.
space because it's super cool and everybody's super into it. And it's great that it gets people revved up.
Mm-hmm.
But you got to really like think about like are you getting revved up because it's just sort of a contagious passion and you just enjoy watching that kind of stuff, or like do you really love it? You know, because and to be honest, maybe you have to try it to figure that out. But just understand that maybe you don't want to go whole hog into, no pun intended, maybe you don't want to go whole hog into something, you know, right off the bat, just assuming you're going to love it. So, yeah, that's part number one, is choosing that mothership. So to recap, tie it back to the land, understand the enterprise itself, understand the land itself, understand your markets, and the most important thing is understand yourself. And if you can put all those together and it's pointing you in a certain direction, just go for it. But the second piece to this whole thing is what we would call like nesting enterprises
or complementary
enterprises.
They're interchangeable.
And like, when do you make the decision to like branch out to sheep if you're doing cattle, for example? When do you start that process? Do you start it right in the beginning? Do you wait? You know, like what are the signs that you're ready to start something? Should you start something? Like these are something else in addition to whatever you're doing. Yeah. So like that's the second piece to this whole conversation is those complementary nested enterprises.
And
they're important.
Yeah, with that, like digging into that, there's no perfect answer for your enterprise. Like as far as time to start or what to start, you know, what complements what you're doing. There's many enterprises that if you look, you know, you look far enough and you kind of like think about what you like to do and what would fit well with your farm. There's many things that'll tie in that like allows for people to like have unique farms. Like everybody it's kind of a cool thing because everybody that has a farm has the ability to then like create like it's different, you know. Like Greg's got mushrooms and cattle and sheep, whereas like someone like Jordan Green has pigs and he still has cattle and he doesn't have sheep, but he has the chickens and so like stuff like that.
There's so many different ways to slice it up.
There's so many different ways.
And it's important, like one might say, you know, why wouldn't you just take like cattle, for example, and run with it and just make it as big as you possibly can and that be like your thing that you make a living off of. And like that's all well and good and you should try to like strive for that, but you become your business just becomes vulnerable if you only have one source of income, like on a very basic level. So it's a good idea at some point to start diversifying your income streams. And
don't put all your eggs in one basket.
Yeah.
No pun intended.
No, that was an intended pun for sure. But in all seriousness, it's important. It's an important discussion and thing to understand is, you know, when should you start thinking about that? And I think we would both agree that you really want to keep it as simple as possible in the beginning for a number of reasons. One, you need to know if you like it or not. But then two, like you were saying, everything that you do is going to go wrong at some point.
The more you do, everything's going to go wrong. And so the more you do, the more is going to go wrong. It's just like part of farming. Like things mess up, you have to put out the fires.
Yep.
And so the more complementary or the more enterprises you're starting at the beginning, the more load you have on yourself, which some people can take it, and that's like specific to each person. But
you just gotta understand that you're gonna be juggling a lot of stuff and putting out a lot of fires at one point. And if you're good with that, then go for it, because there is a benefit of having that additional income and having that diversified revenue streams. But I think there's a lot of people that bite off more than they can chew right in the beginning, where they're super gung-ho about it. They're like, I'm going to do cattle, pigs, chickens, sheep, guard dogs, shiitake mushrooms, fence posts, farm tours, farm consults, conferences, interns, like right out of the beginning. Maybe not that extreme, but to some degree like that. And then they just burn out in 6 months and it becomes an absolute nightmare for them and their family and friends. So, really, like, I would say an ideal scenario, and I understand that this doesn't work for everybody, because some people, like, they need a certain level of income for them to make it work. So they're gung-ho to start other stuff to to try to build that income stream. But if you could grow the business as you grow in your experience and your comfort level with this kind of stuff, you're going to be so much better off. So if you can start it super simple, start with one thing that is your like mothership, and just let that thing rock and understand all the ins and outs and nuances of it. When you really feel like you've mastered that and you're on top of the game, and obviously you learn every day, but once you sort of feel like I got this under control, even in the worst times, I feel like I'm under control, then you can start thinking about, all right, how can I start incorporating other things and attach them onto this central enterprise. And so that's what we mean by like complementary. And like what would be like I think a good example of like what that complement actually is. You know what I mean? Like,
what do you mean?
Like as in with sheep and cattle, for example.
Yeah.
Like there's a really cool complementary. There are really cool complementary like enterprises because they're both grazers.
Yeah.
Like they both essentially require the same thing. So if you're set up to manage for cattle, you're set up, you're used to the paddock divisions, you're used to like understanding how to slice up, like an area of land according to the nutrient requirements for that given animal. Like all that kind of stuff is the same for sheep. It's just slightly different.
And if you can make it work and you can run the sheep in with the cattle, it just adds like so much more benefits to it, because you've got one flurd that you're moving at the same time. Another good example of a complementary enterprise is guard dogs.
Yep.
To
with sheep.
Because you need guard dogs, especially if you're at least if you're in this area or in most areas in the country that have predators of sheep like coyotes or bobcats or whatever. You need the guard dogs to protect the sheep. Well, then if you already have to have guard dogs, why not have a breeding pair and have pups and whelp on pasture and sell those and to make more income. It doesn't take any more land, because guard dogs don't need grass. They just need kibble. It doesn't take any more infrastructure, because they're going to be in with the sheep. It just it'll take a little more time probably to get used to it, work out the kinks. It's a learning curve, just like anything, but
that's what makes it exciting.
It's something like easy like that you can plug in to a sheep enterprise, and you have extra income coming off the same land. So.
And I think that the sort of closing note with that, as well as the closing note with your mothership, is the fact that you need to be interested in it. You need to like doing it, even with those complementary enterprises. Like there has to be some level of enjoyment there. You can't just be doing it to diversify income streams, because you're going to start resenting it, and then it just starts to drag down whatever enjoyment you had when you were just running sheep, or you were just running cattle, or you were just doing goats or whatever. You know what I mean? Just always be measuring with yourself. Is this something that I really want to do? Because
and it doesn't have to be something that you're crazy about, but it has to be something that you find a little bit of enjoyment at least from.
The like effort and the headache that it causes, because everything's is gonna require effort and headache to a different degree. The effort and headache that it causes has to be worth not only like the monetary gain that you get out of that, but also like the fulfillment that like you get out of that. At least in my opinion.
I think so too.
Because some people might argue with me and say, hey, if it's super lucrative, like I'll do anything, but I'm not about that.
There's more to life than money.
Yeah.
I mean, not that money isn't important,
and you have to make money in order to
do what you love.
Yeah, you gotta make money.
It's part of it,
but like money being the end all be all, or like the end goal, should never be. It should be. This is getting into a totally different topic, but it should be happiness, not monetary gain. Anyway,